Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, you are watching What You Need.
You know, it's funny how one person can go from being someone dreaded and feared to someone who's the butt end of jokes. If anybody follows the full career of Victor Ortiz, they would know what kind of fighter he actually is. We're going to look at the career of Victor Ortiz because a lot of times fight fans have very short memory and they can only remember a fighter by the last fight he had. We're going to go into Victor Ortiz's career right now. He began his career in 2004, and vicious Victor Ortiz won most of his fights by knockout. And if he didn't knock out his opponent, he would certainly knock them down. In 2005, only a year since he began, he was disqualified in a fight against Corey Alarcon. Why was he disqualified? Because he hit Alarcon when he was knocked down with an illegal punch. Victor Ortiz was known as Vicious Victor Ortiz for a reason. Win or lose, he would hurt you in his fights. Every single fight from 2004 till his fight with Floyd Mayweather Jr., Victor Ortiz either knocked down his opponent or knocked them out. He was on a tear, knocking out Robert David Arrieta for the vacant WBO NABO super lightweight title. He went on to knock out Jeffrey Resto to defend his title, and then he knocked out Mike Arnautis, adding to his accomplishments the USBA super lightweight title. And then his crossroads clashed with Marcos El Chino Maidana, June 27th, 2009, for the vacant interim WBA World Super Lightweight title. In that fight, it was the war of two worlds. Victor Ortiz knocking down Marcos Maidana in round one, and then Marcos Maidana replying and knocking down Victor Ortiz in the very same round. Victor Ortiz would turn on the real power and surge and knock down Marcos Maidana twice in round two. It looked like the fight was over. But then the tables turned, and Marcos Maidana, using roughhouse tactics, was able to rough up Victor Ortiz on the inside. And in the sixth round, Victor Ortiz crumbled as Marcos Maidana caught him with a left hook. Victor Ortiz got up, but it was decided that he would not continue the fight after the doctor saw him. And so the fight was stopped by TKO in the sixth round. From this point on, people questioned Victor Ortiz's heart. If the tide was to be turned and the tables turned on him, would he continue and persevere through a fight? He would go on to knock out his next two opponents and then face the very skilled Nate Campbell. He would knock down Nate Campbell in the very first round of the fight and close off the fight by unanimous decision victory. He would face Vivian Harris and knock him out in the third round, then face Lamont Peterson and knock him down twice in round three. But Peterson would come on strong in the later rounds, making people question again if Victor Ortiz's heart was in the game. He would jump up one weight class to face Andre Berto at welterweight. Andre Berto was the welterweight champion at the time. Victor Ortiz had a 100% record of either knocking down or knocking out his opponents. He had also peeked into the welterweight division 3 fights before. He faced Antonio Diaz at welterweight and Hector Alator at welterweight. As a result, facing Andre Berto would not be as great a challenge as many people thought. but they thought it was a big step up to face the world champion. In the first round, Victor Ortiz came out like a whirlwind and knocked down Andre Berto. Andre Berto would respond by knocking down Victor Ortiz in round 2. The fight would go on, Victor Ortiz roughing up Berto, and Berto fighting back. In round 6, Andre Berto knocked down Victor Ortiz, and then Victor Ortiz knocked down Andre Berto. Victor Ortiz was rabbit punching behind Berto's head and deducted a point in that match. It was a to-and-fro match in which Victor Ortiz got the upper hand. For once, people could say that he had heart, as he went all the way to the end, getting a unanimous decision win over Andre Berto and pulling off a serious upset. This was the Victor Ortiz that faced Floyd Mayweather Jr. Victor Ortiz was known as Vicious Victor Ortiz. And when he faced Floyd Mayweather Jr., his viciousness came out as he tried to catch Floyd Mayweather in round 4. Getting him to the corner, he threw a flurry of punches and then headbutted him. This led to a stop in the action, and Ortiz was penalized 1 point for a headbutt. Luckily, he wasn't disqualified, but on resumption, instead of returning to his vicious ways, he tried to make amends, and so he was caught with a 1-2 and dropped. His next fight was the following year against Josecito Lopez, in which, again, he began the fight dominating. And then as the rounds started to move on, Vicious Victor Ortiz resorted to holding and clenching. And in round 9, in the midst of a trade-off, Josecito Lopez caught Vicious Victor Ortiz on his jaw while it was open and broke his jaw in 2 places. He had to stop, and he retired from the fight. Many people perceived that his heart was gone, but in fact he was badly damaged, although he was winning the fight on 3 judges' scorecards. He would return 2 years later and face Luis Collazo. He would come out with the usual fury, but with some recklessness, throwing caution to the wind, and Luis Collazo caught him with a perfect left shot in the exchange of hooks, and Ortiz went down, and he did not rise. Again, some people question his heart. A lot of people question if he was able to get back into the ring and his mentality towards boxing. He would go on at the end of that year to face Manuel Perez, who was not a welterweight. He actually came from a much lower weight class of 135 pounds. Ortiz systematically broke him down and then stopped him in round 3. What is to happen to Victor Ortiz? Is his heart in the boxing game? These are always the questions that people ask. No one questions his power, because Victor Ortiz has tremendous punching power. What many people have questioned is his heart. A lot of people think that Victor Ortiz, he's washed up, and if the going gets rough, he will fold. But what I believe is that Victor Ortiz still has a lot of fight in him. And the only thing he has to overcome is the hurdle of his past fights. Stay tuned. I'm sure there's more that you will hear about in the chapter of Victor Ortiz. You guys have a great day.